Ready to explore the Venice of the East, city of lakes? Let's get going to Udaipur. Welcome, Travel Nation, to the Traveling Cheesehead. I'm Cheesehead Girl. Thanks for joining me today. If we're first meeting, this channel is all about you, the crazy independent traveler. I share with you my journeys around the world, travel tips and tricks, and like today's video, I take you to Udaipur. So Udaipur is an amazing city in India. It honestly is probably one of my favorite destinations that I've been to in India. And it is just magical, mystical. It's in the land of kings in Rajasthan, and is just one of those places you need to experience. It is one of the most picturesque places that I have ever been to. The setting is amongst all of these lakes. They call it the Venice of the East for a reason. There are a series of man-made lakes settled in the mountains of Rajasthan, and it is also known as the White City. In a previous video, I took you to Jodhpur, which is known as the Blue City. So this is one of their color-coded cities, if you will. But Udaipur is really a place that you need to experience. Now, we stayed at Cambay Spa and Resort just outside of the center of the city of Udaipur. And we were there for a week, and I will tell you, it was not enough time to fully explore this city, though we saw a ton. So I'm gonna jump right into it here and give you all the places that we visited, what I thought about them. First of all, I will leave all the links to all of the places that I talk about below, so you can explore a little bit more on your own to determine if you want to visit there as well when you're building your itinerary to India. Now again, we did this on our own without a travel agent or a guided tour, anything like that. We did hire a car, so we had a driver and a car at our disposal to take us around, but you can also explore the city in many other ways, like rickshaw. It is a small, tight city center with a large, vast area to explore in the surrounding hills of the city. So with that in mind, we're going to start with the first stop on our tour of Udaipur, which is the City Palace. This structure is incredible. You're going to spend a good couple of hours exploring the City Palace and museum that is connected to it. There are many different vantage points to see the City Palace from outside, but going inside is a unique experience in and of itself. There are audio tours, so you can get a little audio guide to carry you through. You can select a guided tour in English or in another language, and they will take you through personally for an additional cost. So there's many options to go through it. We did more of a self-guided thing and really just explored the unique architecture and artwork and beauty that this palace has. One of the things that stands out is how many beautiful vantage points there are to oversee the city and get views of the surrounding hills and city from this palace. It allows for some incredible photos. And we really enjoyed our tour through this magical palace. So a couple things about the city palace. It was built by the Mewar Empire, and it sits on the eastern shore of Lake Pichola, which is, I believe, the largest of the lakes in that region, and where a lot of other historic palaces and which are now pretty much hotels sit around that lake as well. The palace itself embodies such a magical presence. It's such beautiful architecture and such grandeur. It's very beautifully and elaborately decorated throughout, and the artwork is outstanding. Something you won't find outside of India. It's quite simply amazing. So next on this fabulous journey is Lake Pichola. Now, what's cool about this lake is there are a variety of places that give you little boat tours out onto the lake. By taking the boat tour, it will bring you up close and personal to the lake palace and several other palaces that are within, like almost little islands within the lake. It will also give you some really cool vantage points of the city palace and some of the other historic palaces that line this beautiful lake. So I highly recommend taking a boat tour out onto the lake. You can't get that kind of perspective in any other way. Now, what I will tell you is a little fun fact. Udaipur was the setting for one of the James Bond films. I believe it was Octopussy is the one that they shot there. But they used Monsoon Palace and some of the other places, Lake Palace especially, as some of the setting for this movie. So just a fun fact, if you want to go back and watch some of the old James Bond movies, you will see Udaipur prominently featured there. So like I mentioned, taking the boat tour brings you up close and personal to things like the Lake Palace, gives you really cool vantage points of the city palace, and then also brings you pretty close to Jagdish, which is another island in the center of the lake, and it's really unique because it has all these elephant statues lining the island itself. So from there, the next stop on this journey is the Karni Mata Temple, which is all the way up the Udaipur Ropeway. Now, just like the boat tour, the ropeway is going to give you some excellent views overlooking the entire city and Lake Pichola. It is one of the best recommendations I can give you to get a really cool vantage point of everything Udaipur. There's also a really cool temple at the top. It was under renovation while we were there, and there were people doing some work on restoring some of the marble inlay and carvings, so I've included some of that information as well. But the ropeway itself was a fun ride. It was very easily accessible all the way to the top, and just gave some really great views, sweeping views of the city, sweeping views of the lake, and gave you a way to see the city from a unique perspective. Next up is the Monsoon Palace. Now this place is, talk about up on top of a mountain. It is literally perched up on top of a mountain overlooking the lake. Now again, great vantage point to get some sweeping views of the rolling hills and mountains surrounding Udaipur. It also gives you a great vantage point to view the city of Udaipur and Pichola Lake again. The one thing that was, after being at City Palace and then going to Monsoon Palace, the main thing that was kind of disappointing was that Monsoon Palace has not been kept up as well as City Palace. City Palace, there's a charge for entry and it's been maintained very well, whereas Monsoon Palace, while stunningly beautiful in its own right, has not been given the same attention. So just manage your expectations. It feels more like an abandoned palace versus where City Palace feels very vibrant and like it is still alive and being used on a daily basis, which I believe it is. Make sure you go to Monsoon Palace because, again, used in the James Bond movie, so there's that magical Hollywood fix to it. But then on top of it, the views from there are stunning. So as this is the city of lakes, I would be remiss not to mention Fateh Sagar Lake. This is another lake that you're going to want to get on a boat and go explore, because in the center of this lake is Nehru Park. This little island park it's just really pretty. It's a botanical garden, has some really pretty fountains, and it's just a nice way to spend an afternoon wandering around. Not to mention the boat ride's always fun. My favorite part of Udaipur was the historic city center. This is kind of still near the city palace, but it's more of in where all the, very congested streets are, and it's also where Jagdish temple is. This is really a cool temple, but get ready if don't go there after leg day, because there are a million steps to climb. But it's a very famous temple, and it's really a cool temple to go to. It's right in the center of the city. It's usually very decorated. The whole area around it had lights, and it was just a very busy, happening spot. It was probably, like I said, my favorite part of the city. You felt the very boho chic vibe going through that area, and it really was a fun place to kind of wander around and explore. So that evening, after going to the temple, we decided to go to the Bangore Ki Haveli, which is a museum. But what's really cool about it is they do these cultural performances where they share an array of dances and puppetry and all kinds of performance cultural arts that are unique to Udaipur and Rajasthan. And the performers are incredible. So there's this lady who, and if you search other YouTube videos, I'm sure you will see her, but she does this thing where she does a spinning dance, and she keeps adding pots to her head. And before you know it, she's got like 10 pots stacked upon her head, and she's spinning in a circle. This woman's crazy, but crazy talented with balance. That's all I can say. There is a cool puppet show, and then dancers with fire on their head. It is a really neat experience, and I believe the cost was very low, if anything. And it was a very crowded venue because they packed the house, but the performers are amazing. Good way to spend a couple hours in the evening, and then head off to dinner. Another really cool thing about Udaipur is, like I said, it's City of Lakes, right? So there are so many little rooftop restaurants throughout the city center that give you a beautiful view of the lake, and they are right on the lake, but you sit up on the rooftop to have your coffee, your tea, or even dinner. And the city really comes to life at night. Everything lights up and is illuminated. And then with the reflection upon the lake, you sit up there, watch the sun go down. The only thing that freaked me out, okay, little side note about me, I hate bats. Hate them. Okay, first of all, I hate mice. So that's number one. And then take a mouse and put wings on it, and you've got a bat. So I don't like bats because they're flying mice. And I'm unreasonably afraid of these things. I know they're more afraid than me, whatever, you can say whatever you want, but I'm terrified. And sitting up on the rooftop at dusk, the bats come out of the caves in the hills and come flying. I mean, lots of them, and not like little bats like that we get here at home, like not the little fruit bats. No. These are like giant bats. Giant. They look like eagles. That's how big they were. And they're flying back and forth, going, getting ready to do their evening hunting. So that was a little freaky because I've never seen that many bats. I've never seen them that large before. So that was a little freakish. So just be aware of that if you're enjoying your coffee or tea up on the rooftop at dusk, while the views of the lake and watching the city illuminate, all of that is magical and wonderful. The bats, the giant flying hundreds of bats, is not so magical. So just something to know. Okay, so another thing about Udaipur that I loved is that while the city center had all the little winding streets, which are great to explore, millions of shops to check out and bring some souvenirs home from, there is also this one area where they also actually do some cultural performances, but really it's more to have an area for artisans to display and sell their wares. This place is called Shilpgram, and it is a series of little huts, and all of these artisans who create anything from wall hangings to they make their own puppets, they do marble inlay. There's a million things that they produce, but they are all artists. Even the hand-painted silk paintings, they have those there as well. They have this whole area that you go into and you can shop, and trust me, this was the place that I probably purchased the most souvenirs. And in a future video, I'm going to kind of break down different things that I brought home from India, for souvenirs that I found to be unique and special, and also very easy to transport in your luggage. So that'll be in a future video, keep an eye for that. But this particular market, I purchased quite a bit of things because they were, first of all, I like things that are unique to the area that I'm in. I like the things that are not mass produced, that are more works of art. That's the kind of souvenir that I like to bring home for the most part. So when I find things like that, and a lot of them, I go a little crazy. So I came home with quite a bit from this one market, but it was all well priced. The artisans are really cool because you can watch them work as they're creating the things. And then they definitely barter with you and things like that as well. So it's not a fixed price, but it was a great place to get souvenirs. Okay, so with Udaipur, the city itself there's a ton to explore. You could spend easily a week just exploring the city, but there's a couple very important cultural things and historical sites to see just outside the city limits. And I'm so thankful that we went to these places because they were really incredible. So the first one we went to is the Sahastra Bahu temples. These temples, it's a small temple complex, but the carvings on these temples were absolutely breathtaking. We spent a good couple hours just walking through and looking at the carvings, and just amazing the amount of detail that was given to these temples. They're stunningly beautiful and well worth the visit. Place that we went on a day trip outside the city was Kumbhalgarh Fort. This is a fort. It's way up on the top of a hill, and then there's a whole almost like a little town around it. And this complex, it's part of a much larger fort. There's the main fort, and then the fort walls expand hundreds of miles in all directions. It's massive. The coolest thing about it is that as you're up at the top, you can see there's temples scattered throughout the hillside, and you can see all these tiny little temples scattered throughout the entire complex. Now there's only really one section that is more popular for tourists to actually explore, and so we spent good amount of time exploring that. But if you wanted to and you were a little bit more adventurous and had lots of time on your hands, you could really explore all of the hills and the temples around. Keep in mind, a lot of those temples are abandoned and not visited and are in thick vegetation, so be prepared. But just making the trek out to that site in general is really worth the day trip. It's something so unique. want to wrap up Udaipur by saying this is a very magical, mystical city. Again, one of my favorite cities in India. So Udaipur is definitely a place that I wanted to spend more time in, and I would consider revisiting in the future. That's not something I say about most destinations I go to. I like to go to different places, but Udaipur has it all. It is relaxing and quiet with plenty of history, art, and culture to explore. So spend your time wisely. Have a great trip. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know when my new video is coming out. Also, please follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Travel Nation, it was a pleasure spending time with you today, sharing my journey to Udaipur. I'd love to hear your journey to Udaipur in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Traveling Cheesehead.